Mayor Frank Cownie, and welcome to this edition of City Spotlight. We're at the Temple for Performing Arts and going to have an opportunity to talk to the producer of America's Darling, a story about Ding Darling. We hope that you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of great information, and we hope that you'll get a chance to see the show as it is going to be shown in and around Des Moines at various theaters. So we hope you enjoy it. Stay with me. We'll be right back.
Reducing, reusing, and recycling your household goods is an important contribution to our impact on our environment. So I encourage each of you to pitch in the blue bin and recycle more.
Hey Ace, can Bill recycle this? That's right, only glass jars and bottles can go into the recycling bin. The other glass is just trash. I'm pitching in.
Hey Serge, can Bill still recycle this? Fill up your blue bin and help keep service costs down. I'm pitching in.
Hey Cubby Bear, I got aluminum cans, soft drinks, and beverages. Can I recycle these? Let's all recycle, especially aluminum cans. I'm pitching in.
Thanks for pitching in, guys. By recycling your household materials like plastics, paper, metals, and glass, you make our community cleaner, you increase the life of our landfill, and you generate cash. Thanks for pitching in.
Welcome back to City Spotlight. I'm Mayor Frank Cownie again, and with me is Sam Koltinsky, who is the producer of the documentary about Ding Darling, America's Darling. Sam, welcome to City Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to us a little bit about how you got started on researching Ding Darling.
Well, I think I would want to say when I started this project, I was wet behind the ears. I had no idea the amount of material that would be associated by this gentleman. He was a modern-day Renaissance man. He was a visionary. There's so many things that he was able to do in his life. I actually learned about Ding Darling down on Sanibel at the Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful refuge that has been associated with Darling. And I did a program down there years ago. And through that program, I met the grandson, Kip Koss. Mm-hmm. And then Kip and I talked, and after several years of research and working on this project for 3 years, we released it on October 23rd in Des Moines. So through the refuge, through meeting the grandson, and learning about this man traveling around the country, I put 80,000 miles on my car just researching this man.
Wow.
Over 2 years.
And of course, it brings you to Des Moines, and for people that are listening, kind of tell them a little bit, those of us who have been here a little while, know a little bit about Ding Darling, but kind of talk to us about his association with Des Moines and the Des Moines Register, and certainly syndicated all across the country to other papers, and what he did there at the
Ding
Register.
loved Des Moines.
Yeah.
He and his wife moved here in about 1906 when he started working at the Register. And if you've ever been into the home, it reflects the whimsical side of him. It reflects the cartoonist. It reflects the musician. It reflects the designer. He was a gardener and two-time Pulitzer Prize winner. And there was a camaraderie here with Ding and his colleagues, along with the local people. I've even spoken to people that would meet him downtown at one of the local barbershops. He mentored as well a very famous artist, Maynard Reese. And young Maynard was about 18 or 19 years old when he first went to the Des Moines Register to meet Darling. And there's a wonderful story in the show about how Maynard was afraid to go to Darling and to meet him and to ask him if he would critique his work. And Darling responded, well, I can tell you they look nice and that won't help you, or I can tell you what they're like and we can start to work. And so Maynard responded, I want to learn, so let's get to work. But Darling mentored Maynard, and you actually see that mentorship reflected in Maynard's work. But, you know, he was a cartoonist here. I mean, his two children that grew up here, Peony Farm, they ended up donating land to the city, the Darling Greenway. So there's a lot of green space associated with Darling and your beautiful city today.
Ding certainly had not only a relationship with the Register and a great talent for art, but he had a passion for the environment. And talk to us a little bit about that and what you discovered in Sanibel and also here in Iowa.
You know, he started the Iowa Cooperative Research Centers. And he brought science into conservation by setting up those centers in Iowa and around the country. Today, those centers train conservationists. He went to Sanibel in the early 30s. He traveled there because of his bronchitis and actually built a fish house that we'll see a little bit later in one of the artifacts. And he was responsible for preserving those islands, Sanibel and Captiva, and actually created the first sign that said no shooting on the islands. And not only did he create that sign, he went out and hammered those signs up. By the way, I have him on film doing that, if you can believe it.
Wow,
We turned up some wonderful archival. He had a passion for conservation and had a passion for wildlife. He went to the governor, of course, in Florida to establish that proclamation that saved those islands. There's a Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge named after him, of course, today, that's just beautiful. So not only was he a cartoonist, but he was a conservationist. He was a leader, too. Darling had a way of bringing people together, regardless of their political affiliation. And he was a visionary, and he could see things before others could. And I think that's one of the reasons people were so willing to follow and to listen and to learn. And if you look at his life, it was a very unselfish life, what he did.
Let's talk a little bit about the documentary itself. As you thought about putting it together, what perspective does the documentary bring, and what should the viewer expect to get out of it as they watch your production?
I created a 75-minute producer's cut for this show. I just refused to cut anymore in the edit room. So naturally we see the Darling's history. He was born in Norwood, Michigan, and his middle name is actually Norwood, J. Norwood Darling. We look at his life in terms of all of the wonderful things that this man was. But if people could leave the show being a bit humbler, more humble, more kinder, better stewards of this planet, then I've done my job. And that's my hope. And I think Darling's legacy can cause us to reflect on who we have been, as well as who we can become. It's a wonderful story, and I have worked on this, as I said, for 3 years, 16,000 cartoons, 300 hours of dictabelt audio, and you hear his voice in the show as well. Over 1,000 images, and on and on and on. You open up one door and 10 others fly open with Ding Darling. So I think it brings out the best of us as human beings. And I marvel at his leadership skills. I think there's a blueprint in the show for leaders. And in a selfish way, in which we can work together to make things happen. And that would be my goal.
Well, I think it is a great opportunity for anybody and everybody to kind of not only see his life, but understand the legacy that he left for all of us. And certainly Des Moines is proud to have had him as our resident cartoonist and person who exposed us to some of the real things that we should be doing with our lives. And you know, we're honored to have you here and have get an opportunity. So why don't we kind of take a moment, maybe you could walk us through some of the artifacts that you,
Sure.
you have here. We'd be excited to see them, and I know our viewers would too.
Great, I'll
bet.
be glad to share.
You bet.
Ali, thanks so much for coming today. I'm excited about sharing some more items that I actually have gathered for our show today with the mayor. You know, Darling was not only a conservationist and cartoonist, but he was a wonderful artist. And we're going to be able to see a side of Darling that very few people know and have seen of Darling today. And I'm excited to share with the audience what we've been able to gather through private collections and people that have just entrusted us with so many wonderful artifacts. So I think I'd like to start out with some of these sketches in pastels. Some of these, of course, are not finished. Darling, as I said, had impatient hands and constantly sketching. He always had a sketchbook with him, regardless of where he was. But I love this one because it shows something that he's very famous for, actually, and that is motion. He was able to put wildlife in motion in his works by the way that he would have their wings spread, by the number of birds or what have you, ducks, in the images themselves. This shows you a really great example of that motion and how basically this is a forerunner to animation and the graphic work that we have today. This one over here shows you some of his sketches. It shows you also the whimsical side of Ding Darling. Darling was a tough man, and Darling had ideas that he truly wanted to realize. And he was able to gather people to realize these visions. But at the same time, there's this childlike, whimsical side to Darling that's enchanting and endearing, and you see this in his sketches. This is actually the seahorse, which later became part of the fireplace metal work on the fish house down at Captiva Island. And we actually have the carving for this here. So if you go inside the fish house, there's this nice fireplace, and he worked the seahorse, his love for wildlife, into that iron work. This is actually his gallery. It's no longer there on Captiva, but that shows you where he used to paint.
So is this the fish house?
It is. This is the fish house. Actually, this is a Christmas card that Darling did in 1955. And in the show, we actually have some footage that goes back to the 1940s. He built it in 1941 and moved in 1942. It's a house on stilts. Charming, and we have actual images from the time that he lived there, as well as archival footage. Darling attended Beloit College. I think he was known as a troublemaker during that time. He actually drew the professors in tutus and got kicked out of school. But he was a musician. He played soccer. In this picture, he's captain of the team. And we actually found one of his early sketchbooks. We actually found one of Ding Darling's sketchbooks when he attended Beloit. And so it's amazing what we have been able to discover in terms of artifacts. These are a couple of his brushes and pencils. He traveled quite a bit, and these pictures here are, again, pastels of his travels to Venice in this case. His water paints. This is one of my favorites because this shows you Muck's Corner. And Muck's Corner is a part of a house that he added on to the home in Des Moines. And he painted there. And you can see what a magnificent environment to create. We have footage of that house as well during the time that he was.
Wow. What a solitary place with the windows behind it.
Yes, and Darling was a designer as well. He designed the light fixtures in the house. There are all kinds of secret compartments throughout the entire house. It's, again, quite whimsical.
Yeah.
The fish I love. He started drawing very early. He had no formal instruction. But he believed to constantly practice, to draw. I think he once told Maynard Reese that if you will create 5 sketches a week, regardless of what it will, you'll become an accomplished artist. And so he was prolific. I mean, again, we're talking about, I mean, there are so many pieces of work out there. I said earlier, 16,000 cartoons. Impatient hands.
Right.
I love this. This actually was painted by a very famous artist, contemporary artist, whose name is Chris Steele. And Chris came to Des Moines and spent 3 days with us here. Chris is responsible for the artwork for the 500th anniversary for the state of Florida. So he came up, he gathered some personal items of Ding Darling, he put them in Monk's Corner, he painted for 3 days, wow. And this is what he came up with.
Beautiful.
It's exquisite. By the way, Chris just fell in love with Des Moines. I think your population is increasing with this project. But Chris was inspired by Darling in a lot of ways, as many artists are and have been. And I'm happy that we're able to include that story in this project. Chris visited the Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge as a child down on Sanibel and was taken by Ding Darling. In fact, he says in the show that Ding Darling, it's a magical name. It kind of rolls off your tongue. You know, it's musical. This is very special. Darling was actually invited by Joseph Stalin to visit Russia. And of course, communism was very controversial then. And Darling wanted to go and see for himself what this was all about. And so he took off, and this is the actual map that he took on his journey.
Oh, wow.
And there's his signature, yes. But there's a story recalled in the show about Darling and Stalin and the housekeeper. And I'll let you watch the movie in order to find out what that the story's about. I'll do that again. I'll let you watch the movie in order to see what that story's all about. I'll give you this much of a hint, though. It's the housekeeper that's running things and not Stalin. Again, this is a carving that Darling did, and this carving represents, again, the whimsical side of Darling. Designer, painter, cartoonist, musician, writer. You know, he wrote several books. Mm-hmm. Conservationist. I mean, you get the entire package. This probably was done here in Des Moines at some point. And I think it goes without saying, I can easily see after traveling here several times how he would be so inspired by such a wonderful town and wonderful people. I have been welcomed here on my journeys for the past 2 years, and it's easy to be inspired by your people here. There's magic when you come to Des Moines, and I've had a great time discovering that along the way. This pastel would have been done probably around the Beloit time.
I think this is one of my favorites.
Is it?
Yeah, I love his signature right there. And
you know, if you can almost look at his work and look at the signatures, and the signatures alone will tell a story. Mm-hmm. And that metamorphosis of his character and being through the signature. By looking at that signature, you can actually tell possibly where Darling was in life and what he was doing. I like this one very much. It says, "To my boss, from Iowa, and proud of it." Mm-hmm. And this would have been his boss at the Des Moines Register. Darling did travel logs. Not only when he traveled around the world would he write about his travels, he would illustrate them. And this is one of those travel logs. And you actually can thumb through it. This was his time in Hong Kong. And I mean, it's chock full of images. Look at the detail that he's been able to capture with the people. And just magnificent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once again, I think this is a side to Darling that people don't necessarily know. But through this exhibit, The Hidden Works of Dean Darling, we're going to tell that story to the world.
Wonderful.
The city of Des Moines recently did a proclamation which we're very pleased to have received news about, and that was declaring October 21st as Dean Darling Day. That was his birth date. He was born on Darling was born October 21st, 1876. In fact, 2012 is the 50th anniversary of his death date. So this is very significant that the mayor and the city were able to make this proclamation happen. You know, this has also been a project to connect young people with art and conservation. And I mentioned early about the Junior Duck Stamp program. And I've been able to travel around the country and meet and see the artwork of young people from the age of 5 on up connected with the Junior Duck Stamp program. It's truly magnificent. In Florida alone, they had over 1,600 entries this past year for the Junior Duck Stamp program. I also saw the artwork of the children at the Neil Smith Wildlife Refuge, and it was exquisite. We have right here the work that Jefferson Jones did. And this is a new one. He's 17 years old. He's also in the film. Look at the detail on that.
Look at that detail. Oh my gosh.
What do you think about the colors?
It's beautiful.
And I think that's part of Dean Darling's legacy, the connection to art, to conservation, to stewardship. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly been wonderful to meet so many young, talented people.
Well, and I love the story about the original duck stamp, how it came about that was the image that they used. I thought that was a great story.
Yes, he actually just drew the concept on a piece of white cardboard that was stuck in a shirt back then that they would use to keep the shirts nice and starched and smooth. And he comes in and draws it, and they actually take it to the people that he was speaking with about the design. And actually, that's how the duck stamp came about being.
Just a quick sketch?
Just a quick sketch, just like that. Impatient hands.
Yeah.
Again. For more information, please visit our website at www.marvoentertainmentgroup.com. And on that website, you'll see a listing for the screenings and premieres that are taking place around the country. Allie, I want to thank you and the Iowa History Center at Simpson University so much for making this all possible. And I look forward to further partnering with you and the university for workshops, for exhibits. There's so many possibilities out there. And I want to thank the mayor as well. You have a wonderful city here, Mayor, and I love coming here, so who knows? Des Moines might just have its new resident. Thanks so much.
I want to thank Ellie and Sam for being with us today and presenting the Ding Darling documentary. It's exciting, and certainly their work has been impressive, and I hope that you all have enjoyed this show as much as I have. Until next time, I'm Mayor Frank Cownie, and this is City Spotlight.